What's good, y'all? You know it's NBA season when there are trade rumors going around, and this happened very, very quickly. We're only like 2 weeks into the NBA season, and trade rumors are booming right now. I've made mock trade videos in seasons past, but usually not this early into the season. But in case you guys did miss it, there is a lot of tension brewing right now between Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies. After the Grizzlies lost to the LA Lakers, the reporters went to Ja Morant and asked him, yo, you didn't look like yourself out there. You didn't have as much energy. Why was that? And Ja Morant, seeming disgruntled, he said, you should ask the coaching staff. Then the reporters tried to dig a little deeper and say, like, you know, why do you think that? Why do you think that? He still tried to defer to the coaching staff. Eventually, the reporters kind of switched their gear and said, what do you think you could have done better to win this game? And Ja still deferred to the coaching staff and said, according to them, maybe not play me as much. Obviously, Thomas Isolo and the Grizzlies coaching staff did not feel happy with being like thrown under the bus like that by Ja, so they suspended him for a game. He came back against the Detroit Pistons, which they did lose, and then again post-game, Ja Morant still looked pretty disgruntled. He said he lost his joy, kind of on some Jimmy Butler type of stuff. He also seemed to be throwing some subtle shots at the coaching staff still when reporters asked him if they kind of worked out their differences and if there's still some tension. He said, oh, well, the coaching staff told you we're good, right? You know, they wouldn't say that if I didn't talk to them. He was very reluctant to say that things actually were worked out and that they had productive conversation behind the scenes. It still seems like he is very disgruntled with either the coaching staff, Memphis, whatever it is. He does not seem happy right now. One of my favorite things about the NBA is the player movement and trying to think like, oh, what would this guy look on this team? And if they move these pieces around, how could that switch up their team dynamic? So in today's video, I mocked up a few different Ja Morant trades that we could potentially see. I tried to be somewhat realistic, but also at the end of the day, I am not an NBA GM. So you guys might disagree with some of the value I'm giving up here. I will say, I think over the last few years, Ja Morant has definitely not tanked, but lowered his trade value between the injuries and not being able to stay on the court. Obviously, the off-court stuff with all of the Instagram Live things and that kind of situation. But then also the fact that he is publicly voicing his disgruntlement with this team, it kind of puts the Grizzlies in a weird spot because if they do want to trade Ja and it eventually comes down to that, they lose a lot of their leverage because all 29 other teams know Ja Morant's not happy there. He wants to move, you know, so it changes up a little bit. But let's just get right into it and talk about the first mock trade that I drew up. This first trade, we see Ja Morant going to the Washington Wizards in exchange for Bilal Coulibaly, CJ McCollum, a 2026 first-round pick from the OKC Thunder, and a 2027 top 8 protected first-round pick from the Washington Wizards. Since the Wizards are still pretty early in their rebuild, I'm not 100% sure if they would jump on a Ja Morant trade, but in my opinion, I think that it could work out. Just thinking about Ja Morant in a Wizards jersey is bringing me flashbacks to John Wall, so I think that would be cool in that type of aspect. But also, I do think that Ja Morant would be able to kind of elevate this team. I think the Wizards have a very solid young core. I know a lot of people don't really like them that much, but I'm pretty high on them, I would say. I do think that they are missing their 1A type of guy. Obviously, in this trade, they would be looking at Ja Morant to be that 1A type of guy alongside Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George. Both these guys are having incredible seasons so far, and I think that Ja Morant would be able to elevate both of them. Obviously, him in a pick and roll with Alex Sarr as one of the best lob throwers in the league, like, you know, having his athleticism paired with these guys, I think would really benefit them. But then also Keyshawn George, we've seen him have to take on a lot of on-ball duties this season. He's done pretty good at it, I will say. But again, having a true point guard ball handler like Ja Morant would again just make that job a little easier for him. And I do think that playmaking is one of the Wizards' biggest weaknesses right now. Obviously, Bub Carrington, he hasn't had the best start to the season. Him next to Ja Morant, hopefully Ja could be a little bit of a mentor towards him and try to coach him up a little bit. But even just, you know, on the court, the tangible stuff right now, Ja Morant will be able to set up a lot of these other scorers. I've mentioned Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George already, but Trey Johnson, Corey Kispert as a shooter, Justin Champagnie. They have plenty of other guys on this roster. Cam Whitmore, I completely forgot about for a second too. You know, they have a lot of athletes and shooters on this team, but no one to really set them up. I feel like Ja Morant would be able to fit like a glove here. Then when you look at it from the Memphis Grizzlies perspective, CJ McCollum coming here, he is on an expiring deal, so more than likely if this trade did go down, they would just let CJ kind of go into free agency and just free up that cap space. They would also get Bilal Coulibaly in this trade. I know a lot of people are kind of down on Bilal, specifically on his offense, because he really hasn't grown too much since his rookie season, but defensively, we all know he is one of the better young defenders in the entire NBA, so having him come to that wing position in Memphis, I think he would just kind of fit what they like to do, being that gritty defensive type of team, and hopefully you do look for him to grow more since he is still a young player. Then they also get the 2 draft picks. Obviously in the Desmond Bane trade, they specifically looked after for draft capital. They were looking to bring that in, and then they got pretty much a salary filler. In this trade, they are getting a little bit of both. They're getting that young player Bilal, a little bit of draft capital, and then of course the salary filler to kind of make it all work out. Moving on to this next trade, we see Ja Morant going to the Phoenix Suns in exchange for Jalen Green, Nick Richards, and a 2026 second round pick from the Philadelphia 76ers. I gotta say, this is probably my favorite mock trade that I created. I'm just thinking about a backcourt of Ja Morant and Devin Booker, and that just seems so exciting to me. That seems like it would be incredibly hard to stop on offense. They would be able to have an elite half-court offense between Devin Booker just being the scorer he is, and then Ja Morant being that facilitator pick-and-roll guy. But then also in transition, they would be able to just kill with Ja Morant picking up that speed. Obviously, Devin Booker, being a trailer or still being the playmaker, because we know he can do that. Like, just all around offensively, those two together seem absolutely elite. And although Jalen Green has yet to play a game for the Phoenix Suns yet, I have been very vocal about the idea of him and Devin Booker in a backcourt together. I feel like it's kind of redundant. I do think that Devin Booker is a solid combo guard, if you want to call him that. Like, he obviously is a shooting guard, but his playmaking is high enough where he's able to be a point guard and be your main ball handler. In a backcourt of him and Jalen Green, I feel like he would have to be more of that passer and that playmaker. And I do like Devin Booker, like many people I would assume, being more of that score-first type of guy. So Ja would be able to slot him back into his actual natural position. And although they are giving up Nick Richards in this hypothetical trade, they still have other big body centers that are able to run the pick and roll with Ja Morant, like Kamal Maliwaj, like Mark Williams, like Oso Ighodaro. I do think that they would just have a really high-level, high-powered offense. And I think Phoenix has a pretty good amount of spacing to kind of leave that paint open for Ja Morant, where we all know he loves to operate. You have Grayson Allen, who's having a great start to the year. Colin Gillespie off their bench has been really good, not only shooting the ball, but being a backup point guard and playmaking for them. Royce O'Neal has been really good shooting the ball. All around, again, like I mentioned at the top of this, I feel like this is my favorite hypothetical trade. I don't know if it will end up happening, but I definitely really, really like it. And then when you look at it from the Grizzlies' perspective, I do think that Jalen Green is probably the best young player they would be able to get in a Ja Morant trade. That could be wrong. Again, like off the top of my head, I can't see any other team giving up a better young player than Jalen Green to try to, bring in a guy like Ja Morant. So I do think that in that aspect, it is kind of a intriguing trade. Obviously, they only get 1 second-round pick in this one, too, so they're not getting much of the draft capital. They are focusing on the young talent in this one. And then they're bringing in a guy like Nick Richards, and right now they are extremely hurt at center. Once they are fully healthy, I'm sure that it will be a little bit better, but regardless, right now, they definitely need some interior presence, some rim protection, some rebounding. Nick Richards definitely does all of those things. And then the last trade of the video, we have Ja Morant going to the Toronto Raptors in exchange for RJ Barrett, Grady Dick, Ochai Agbaji, a 2026 first-round pick, and a 2028 first-round swap. We saw last year in the Brandon Ingram trade, the Raptors are not shy from buying low on a player and just taking a shot on bringing in talent to Toronto. There's not a lot of free agents that want to sign in Toronto, so the only real way to get a high-level player is to trade for him or draft him. Obviously, with the Brandon Ingram trade, we saw it's worked out pretty well. They bought low on him, and he's having a pretty good start to the season. Buying low on Ja Morant would be incredible because I don't know how else they would be able to bring in a guy of Ja's talent level. And I mentioned before the season started, I was a little shaky on the fit of the Raptors because all around it seems like there's a lot of guys that are score first, not a lot of but true playmakers. Obviously, like I mentioned, Ja Morant is one of the better playmakers in the NBA, one of the better ball handlers in the NBA, so he would kind of fill that entire like hole for the Raptors. It would also put Emmanuel quickly back to his natural position of shooting guard. I know he is kind of a combo guard, but I do think that he is better as a off-ball two guard than more of a playmaker. You know, I don't think that he needs to be the guy with the ball in his hands every single possession. I think he's a good secondary playmaker and ball handler, but mainly he should be off the ball. So Ja Morant would kind of put him back into his proper position, and then having him next to other guys like Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes, like that just really seems like it would go incredibly well. I will say the spacing on that lineup would be very questionable for sure, especially with the season that Ja has had so far from three. He's shooting like 15% from three or something like that. So I wouldn't love that aspect of it, but from a pure talent perspective, I really would like it. And speaking of spacing, the Raptors trading away 3 wings in this hypothetical trade, it would open up more opportunity for guys like Jamison Battle, who is shooting lights out. He had an incredible heroic level performance against the Cleveland Cavaliers a few games ago. He went 7 for 7 from the field, 6 for 6 from 3 in the second half. Like, absolutely incredible game. I do think that he needs a little bit more minutes, so obviously that would open up for him. Maybe even Jacoby Walter would get some more burn. Regardless, I do think that this would be a real good trade, again, for just bringing in talent to Toronto. And then for the Grizzlies, I just was saying that Jalen Green is probably the best young player that you would be able to get for Ja Morant. I think that RJ Barrett and Jalen Green are probably around the same level of player. Obviously, RJ is a little bit older than a guy like Jalen Green, but he would be the main drawing piece of this trade. You do get a little bit more draft capital as well with the 2 first-round picks, or the 1 first-round pick and the first-round swap. So, you know, that's kind of the balance between RJ being a little bit older than a guy like Jalen Green. They also get Ochai Agbaji and Grady Dick in this one, and even though both of those guys have been really shaky to start the year, a change of scenery can be a whole new thing for players. They could completely, you know, flip the page and become someone completely different. So I do think that it's something worthwhile. You know, whether they turn into something or not, we don't know, but I do think that it would be a little bit more of a draw for Memphis being able to bring in these young guys. What do you guys think, though? Where do you think Ja Morant will end this season? Will he stay on the Grizzlies? Will it be one of these 3 teams I mentioned? Did I miss out a team that you think he can go to? Whatever it is, leave it in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch ya.